What is the one voice you hear more than anyone else's? It's not your boss, it's not your friends, it's not your family, it's your own. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, there's a constant conversation happening inside your mind. Sometimes that anger encourages you, pushes you forward, and reminds you of your strength. Other times that same voice can be critical, doubtful, and quick to point out your flaws. For many people, the most influential voice in their life is also the one they pay the least attention to. But here's the truth. The way you speak to yourself shapes your confidence, your decisions, and ultimately the direction of your life. In today's episode, we're exploring the inner dialogue, mastering self-talk, learning how to recognize the voice inside your mind, challenge the negative patterns that hold you back, and intentionally create a more empowering conversation with yourself. Because when you learn to guide your inner dialogue, you begin to guide your life. Let's begin. Talking to younger Jack. As I sit here in 2026, appreciating my life the way it is now, I often find myself thinking about the younger version of me. The version of me who would have never believed I'd become the man I am today. I think about that young black boy filled with curiosity. A kid who was amazed by the beauty of the world around him, even while growing up in circumstances that was far from easy. A kid who really didn't have a clear direction in life, but knew deep down he just wanted to be good. I remember asking questions about everything. How does the sky get those gradient colors when the sun begins to set? Why does the moon seem to follow me when I'm walking down the street at night? What are those family of birds saying to each other as they fly across the sky? The world felt big, mysterious, and full of possibilities, even when my own life felt small and uncertain. And despite the pain that lived in some of my memories, despite the scars I carried from things a child should never have to experience, there was still a quiet voice inside of me imagining a different future. I didn't know exactly what that life looked like. I didn't have a roadmap, but I knew a few things. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to be a strong and responsible man. I wanted stability, a life that felt safe, steady, and meaningful. So even when life felt heavy, I kept moving forward. Not always confidently, not always perfectly, but step by step, I kept moving. And if I could sit across from that younger version of myself today, that curious kid trying to make sense of the world, there's a few things I would want him to know. I tell him, don't listen to that voice that tells you you're not enough. That voice will show up sometimes. It will even try to convince you that your past defines you, that your circumstances limit you, or that the road ahead is too hard. But that voice is not the truth. I tell him to be careful about the company he keeps. Some people will try to pull you down paths that don't align with the person you're meant to become. Not everyone walking beside you is meant to walk the whole journey with you. I'd remind him that it's okay to talk about his emotions. It's okay to sit down with family and acknowledge the pain everyone is feeling. Because the strongest thing you can do as a man is to allow yourself to be honest about what's inside your heart. And most importantly, I'll tell him this. Your life is a blessing, even when it feels confusing, even when it feels painful, even when you feel like you're walking through the world alone. The dreams you're holding in your mind right now, the vision of the man you hope to become, that life is possible. You can grow into that person. You can become the man you imagined. So keep going, kid. Keep asking questions. Keep believing there's something better ahead. Keep trusting that your story isn't finished yet. And whatever you do, don't give up. Becoming aware of your inner voice. Every person listening to this episode has an ongoing conversation happening inside their mind. From the moment you wake up in the morning to the moment you fall asleep at night, there's a quiet voice quietly narrating your experiences, interpreting situations, and shaping how you feel about yourself and the world around you. Sometimes that voice is encouraging. It tells you to keep going when things get difficult. It reminds you of your strengths when you feel uncertain. But other times that same voice can become your harshest critic. It can replay past mistakes. It can magnify your insecurities. It can whisper doubts about whether you're capable of achieving the life you want. The challenge is that many of us grow so used to this inner dialogue that we keep noticing it altogether. It runs in the background of our minds like automatic programming. When something goes wrong, the voice might immediately say, "I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. I'll never get this right." And because we hear that voice so often, we begin to accept those thoughts as facts. But mastering your self-talk begins with one simple but powerful step: awareness. You begin paying attention to the language you use with yourself. You begin to notice the patterns. And once you become aware of that internal voice, you realize something important. Just because a thought appears in your mind doesn't mean it deserves to be believed. That realization opens the door to something more powerful: the ability to challenge the thoughts that hold you back. Challenging negative self-talk. Negative self-talk often develops slowly over time. It might come from criticism we heard growing up. It might come from moments where we failed or felt embarrassed. It might come from comparisons we make between ourselves and others. Over time, those moments form a mental script that begins repeating automatically. And before we realize it, our inner voice becomes filled with statements like, "I'm not smart enough. I'm behind in life. I'm probably going to fail anyways." But here's the truth that many people never stop to consider. Not every thought deserves your belief. Your mind is capable of producing thousands of thoughts every single day. Some are helpful, some are neutral, and some are simply echoes of old fears and past experiences. Mastering your inner dialogue means learning to pause when those thoughts appear and ask yourself a few powerful questions. Is this thought actually true? Is there evidence that contradicts it? Would I speak to someone I care about this way? Often, when we examine our negative self-talk closely, we realize how unfairly we treat ourselves compared to the way we treat others. We extend patience to friends. We encourage the people we care about when they struggle. Yet, when it comes to ourselves, we can be incredibly harsh. Learning to challenge negative self-talk weakens its power. Over time, those automatic criticisms begin to lose their authority. And once you begin to question those old mental scripts, you create space for something new. Because after you challenge the negative voice in your mind, the next step is deciding what kind of voice you want guiding your life moving forward. Rewriting the inner narrative. Once you become aware of your inner voice and begin challenging negative patterns, you gain the opportunity to rewrite your internal narrative. This doesn't mean pretending life is always easy. It doesn't mean ignoring mistakes or avoiding responsibility. Instead, it means developing a voice that encourages growth instead of reinforcing doubt. For example, instead of saying, "I always mess things up," you might begin telling yourself, "I'm learning and improving each time I try." Instead of thinking, "I'm not capable of this," you might shift the conversation to, "This is difficult, but I'm capable of figuring it out." The difference may seem small, but the impact over time is enormous. Your inner dialogue becomes less about judgment and more about progress. When that shift happens, something else begins to change as well. You approach challenges with more courage. You recover from mistakes more quickly. You develop greater resilience when life gets difficult. Because when the voice inside your mind becomes supportive instead of destructive, you start moving through life with a completely different level of confidence. And eventually, that supportive inner dialogue becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a quiet guide that reminds you of your strength when the road ahead seems uncertain. Because the truth is this: the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself every single day. And when you learn to guide that conversation with intention, you begin guiding your life in a more powerful direction. Be careful how you're talking to yourself, because you are listening. Lisa Hayes. As we close today's conversation, I want you to remember something simple but powerful. You are in a conversation with yourself every single day. Some days that voice encourages you. Some days it challenges you. And sometimes, if we're not paying attention, that voice can become the loudest critic in the room. But the truth is, your inner dialogue is not fixed. It's not something you're stuck with for the rest of your life. It's something you can shape. When you begin paying attention to the way you speak to yourself, when you start challenging the thoughts that try to convince you you're not enough, and when you choose to replace those thoughts with words that encourages growth instead of doubt, you begin changing more than just your mindset. You begin changing the way you experience life. Because the voice inside your mind will be with you through every challenge, every opportunity, and every moment of uncertainty. And when that voice becomes one of encouragement, patience, and belief, something powerful happens. You begin moving through life with more confidence. You begin trusting yourself more. You begin realizing that the person guiding your journey has been with you all along. That voice is you. So be mindful of the words you use. Be patient with yourself when you stumble. And remember that growth often begins with a conversation happening quietly inside your mind. Until next time, stay curious, stay reflective, and keep following your inner compass. Thank you.